This is my review of Star Trek Khan, the 9-part audio drama series written by Kirsten Beyer and David Mack, based on a story by Nicholas Meyer. Set between the events of Space Seed and the Wrath of Khan, the story chronicles Kar Noonien Singh's time on Ceti Alpha 5, showing how this charismatic tyrant, exiled by Kirk, became the man hell-bent on revenge by the time of his escape 15 years later. For reasons that continue to escape me, there's always been an interest in telling the story of Khan's time on the doomed Ceti Alpha 5. I don't think we need to fill every blank space in the canon, and if we're going to do so, it needs to be of a quality that really adds something meaningful to the universe. Unfortunately though, while it's an impressive production with a strong cast, Star Trek Khan feels a bit unnecessary. It's a story that doesn't deepen what we already know in any kind of meaningful way. Instead, we get a story that, with the exception of a few interesting but ultimately disposable revelations, is mostly just an elongated retread of what Khan tells Tyrell and Chekhov during his introduction in The Wrath of Khan. To my knowledge, this is Star Trek's first major foray into scripted audio storytelling, and if that's the case, this is a mostly successful first production. The overall quality is solid, with a rich sound design and an impressive voice cast. I never thought a podcast could ever sound cinematic, but here we are. But this format is very much an acquired taste. Personally, I've always struggled with fiction in audio form. Give me a non-fiction audiobook and I'm fine, but I'm way less comfortable when it comes to this kind of thing. I frequently found myself missing the descriptive texture that you usually get when reading a novel, and to that end, it often felt like I was only getting half the experience. That said, I think it's great to see the franchise experimenting with new formats. It might not have completely worked for me, but based on the feedback the show's been getting, there's clearly an audience for this kind of thing, and it's great to see Trek trying out new mediums to appeal to different fans. The strongest aspect of the series is undoubtedly its casting. Naveen Andrews is an inspired choice as Khan, effortlessly capturing all the right notes of intellect, charisma, and power that defined Ricardo Montalban's performance, while still somehow making the role his own. It's a genuinely brilliant performance, and while I hope Trek gives the Khan stuff a break for a while, I mean, they won't, let's be real, I think Andrews would be perfect if they ever decide to bring the character back to the screen. Ren Schmidt, aka Margot from the excellent For All Mankind, is also pretty great as Marla McGivers, lending her quietly powerful voice to give this character far more agency than she ever had in her original appearance. Like I said, the story's okay. It's competent, entertaining in places, but ultimately, I found it a little hollow. It doesn't enrich Space Seed or The Wrath of Khan, and it doesn't really give us any new insights into Khan's psyche or motivations. The whole thing suffers from a pretty big case of prequelitis. We all know how this is going to go, we know Marla's doomed, and we know Ceti Alpha 6 is set to explode at any moment and turn paradise into one big sandy wasteland. For me, the suspense just isn't there. The framing device, featuring a doctor in the late 23rd century investigating newly discovered logs from Ceti Alpha 5, feels more like an excuse to get us to the main story rather than an interesting thread of its own, and that's even with the revelation at the end that I'm quite certain we all saw coming from the off. Still, this does allow the series to bring back some familiar faces. We see, or hear I should say, George Takei returning as Captain Sulu, and Tim Russ reprises his role of Tuvok, at this point still a young ensign serving on the Excelsior. Obviously, Takei's voice doesn't quite match up with what he should sound like around the events of the Undiscovered Country and Voyager's flashback, but it's still nice to hear one of the OG Trek icons back doing what he does best. Russ, on the other hand, though, sounds almost exactly the same, and that's awesome. The biggest disappointment for me, though, is the story's central conflict. Rather than focusing on some sort of Lord of the Flies type of internal struggle, which I guess we do get to a degree, the drama's far more focused on the introduction of a group of aliens who also become stranded on the planet. It's a twist that adds some intrigue to the story, but again, it doesn't really add anything to what we already know about Khan and his motivations. The issue here, though, might be that I think I've just got a way better story. Rather than alien conspiracies and secret descendants, I would have gone with a much simpler story, focusing on a leadership struggle in the aftermath of the destruction of Ceti Alpha 6. Khan's support begins to splinter. Some remain loyal, but others blame him for their predicament, and in the face of doom, the mask slips as his followers begin to see him for what he really is. Crucially, one of these people is Marla, who eventually leaves Khan, having become disillusioned by the man she thought she knew and loved. In a desperate attempt to win his people back and restore order, Khan resorts to weaponizing the mind control properties of the Ceti Alpha eel. Khan infecting Marla with an eel to try and win her back and maintain control is a killer idea, quite literally, and is completely in line with the character. And all this still allows the story to deal with some pretty heady themes, and would also add a kind of Shakespearean tragedy to the whole thing, which I think better connects the dots between the characters' two appearances. Like I said, I think this is much better than what we ended up getting here, but I'll let you be the judge. Let me know in the comments, I guess. Another issue I have is that the series just feels a little unsure of how to handle its main character. Modern Star Trek loves trying to humanize its villains. I mean, just look at the lengths it went to try and make us love the tyrannical, eyeball-munching Emperor Giorgio. Here it feels the writers can't decide just how sympathetic Khan should be. The series stops short of fully rehabilitating him, but it still tries to paint him as a complex figure. Someone who might be misunderstood, someone who might even deserve our pity. No, Khan doesn't need our pity. He's one of Star Trek's all-time greatest villains, a monstrous dictator Superman who tried to rule the entire Earth. Sure, he's brilliant and charming, but the attempt to recontextualize him as some sort of tragic anti-hero feels like a mistake. Star Trek Khan is an intriguing curiosity, a nice present for fans who have spent years speculating on Nicholas Meyer's Ceti Alpha 5 project. We never thought we'd see it, but here it is, and what it is something that's mostly competent, occasionally engaging, never dull, and elevated by some truly great performances. But in the end, it's not hard to see why this story never made it to the screen. The concept just doesn't really justify itself. This feels like an interesting footnote rather than an essential chapter in the wider Star Trek story. Still, despite everything I just said, I'm still glad this exists. It's great to see the story finally realised in some form, rather than spending forever stuck in development hell. For those who enjoy audio dramas, or those who still don't think there's enough Khan in the Trek universe, this is probably going to go down a real treat. For me, though, it's mostly just empty calories, and I'm always going to maintain that my story's way better, and for that reason, I'm giving Star Trek Khan a 6 out of 10. It's closer to a 7 than a 5. But what did you think of Star Trek Khan? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How would you rate it? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more Star Trek reviews, and until next time, live long and prosper.